Hello, everybody. Welcome to After Hours Live with your favorite RCDD, Chuck Bowser. So tonight we're going to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, put them in. Oh, it actually is that way. Put them in the chat box. I've got a list of questions submitted to me over the week, and we are going to go through those questions today or tonight. But as you know, we always start off with every class. Let me change that banner. I always seem to forget to change that banner. Let's do this one. We always start the show off with, what are you drinking tonight? Again, this is an after-hour show, so you can be drinking anything you want. So again, Chuck is again drinking sugar-free soda. And just for those who may not believe me, this is what I'm drinking. It's ginger ale Zevia. Doesn't taste exactly like ginger ale, but it's really, really, really close. So it helps satisfy those cravings. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So this is a really good week. This week I had 3 classes I taught, lots of good questions. Had the TDMM study group. We went through the last part of the shots. He's in the house drinking Dr. Pepper. We had a really good TDMM study group this week. We finished up Principles of Transmission and entered into the electromagnetic chapter, which is chapter number 2. And I got a request from somebody else to join the TDMM study group, and I shot an email and said, well, I can let you join, but we're already in our 4th week, so you got a lot of makeup to do. So I think after this one, if somebody reaches out to me, I'm not going to accept anymore because it's not fair to the other people. But I do want to make sure that we have people who have the abilities. There will be another TDM study group after this one. After we get done with this one in 6 months, we'll do another one. I'm also looking at purchasing a copy of the ITSM manual, the Information Transport Systems Installations Methods Manual, and maybe start a study group for those who are looking to take their Big C installer and technician tests, right? So, because that's actually 2 tests. You got the test and the hands-on component. I can't really help you with the hands-on component because we're doing, it's virtually, and there's no way to really tell what test you're going to get. But one of the tests is the written test, and that information is based on some information that we're going to do a study group for them. But that one's in the future. I got other stuff I got to get finished before then. I have other projects that I'm trying to get done before then. So we just kicked out an interview with about the Big C Winter Conference on how we felt it went. I got another one on processing. So if you were a guest on that one will be posted here within the next day or so. And so we did that. And then I'm actually got another interview that I'm going to try to line up for Monday's show. So interesting stuff going on. Again, if you want to watch this stuff, you can watch us on YouTube. Look up letstalkcabling.com, the podcast. We're on Apple, Google, all that other fun stuff. Just Google us. Do hashtag CBRCDD, and you will find us. You will find us. Or you can just go straight to our webpage, and that's where all the audio content is put on as well. So both the audio and the video and also the articles that I write too. So special offer. I tried something last week, so I'll put that hook out again this week. If you want to be a special guest on tonight's show, there's the link. Just type it in. It'll pop in my waiting room, and we'll bring you on live, and you get to ask your question face-to-face with me. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. I'm an easy guy. I'm pretty easygoing. I'm not gonna hurt anybody. I get that all the time. You look so mean. Look so mean. So again, put your questions in the chat box if you want something that's been questioning you. Actually, Shotzi, you had a question for me last week or right after last week, and I can't remember. I wrote it down, but I can't remember where I wrote it down. So if you can remember that question, do me a favor and put it in the chat box, and we'll answer that. So this is a collection of questions that I've collected over the week. A collection of questions that I collected over the week. Wow, I'm a real wordsmith sometimes. Holy Toledo. So the first question I got was somebody reached out to me and they asked, is there a way to get online access for all the standards, like by paying a yearly premium instead of purchasing the standards individually? And the reason they're asking that is if you price standards, they are not cheap. They are extremely expensive, just to kind of give you a hint. And I hadn't priced them in a few years, so I went and looked them up. If you buy just the 568.0 standard from IHS Global, if you buy again in the US, it's $392. Just that one standard, the 568.0. The .1 is going to cost you $297. The .3 is going to cost you $529. The .3 is going to cost you $349. Altogether, just that one set, the 568 series standards, are going to cost you over $1,500. Over $1,500. That's a chunk of change. I was telling somebody just the other day that knowledge is expensive, but being uninformed is more expensive. It really, really is. So it's going to cost you a ton of money. Now, you can purchase them in either the PDF version or the printed version, or you can buy both the PDF and the printed version. So just to kind of give you an example, the 569 standard is $355 if you buy the PDF. It's also $355 if you buy the printed book. If you buy both, the PDF and the printed book, it's going to cost you $568. So you save a little bit of money if you buy both, but that's still a ton of money. Still a ton of money. I would like to know, and this is not just ANSI, this is everybody creates technical manuals. They charge the same price for the PDF as they do the book. And I don't know if I agree with that or not. That's just my personal opinion. I think the PDF should be a little bit cheaper because you're not having to print the books and ship those books. So yes, so Shotzi asked the question, if someone couldn't afford the TDMM, would the Bixby Field Guides be a good starting place? Okay, so it really depends on what your end goal is. Thank you for that question, Shotzi. I couldn't remember what was last week. That's a great question. So it really kind of depends on what your end goal is, right? So if you're brand spanking new to the industry and you want to learn more, my recommendation is to go to the Bixby Pocket Guides. And for those who don't know what those are, you can buy them. I have a set that I keep on my desk. I gave away a set not too long ago. I think they are about $35 a piece, so about $100 or so. You got a copper, a fiber, and then a general installation one. So if you're brand new to the industry, these are what you want to get, because these tell you how to work safely. These tell you how to terminate copper, how to terminate fiber, and explains all that fun stuff. If you've been in the industry for a little while and you're trying to get towards a project management or a estimating position, then the TDMM is going to be the book that you're going to want to buy. Just be warned, the TDMM is going to be a little bit more expensive than the Pocket Field Guides. But I have copies of both, and I think they are both worth having, worth purchasing, and they're worth the investment. So getting back to the original question, so the guy that shot me the message wanted to know if you could buy a subscription service. And on that webpage, the IHS Global webpage, that's where you go to purchase the standards. I didn't see anything about a subscription service. It was about buying the document. You can buy the individual standards or you can buy them in groups. So, for example, they have a TIA wiring standards group that you can purchase. And when you buy that standard group, you get the 568, the 569, I'm looking at my notes here, the 570, the 598, the 606, the 607, the 758, the 526-7, and the 526-14. And that entire set is $1,560. Which is what the price of just buying that one set of the 568 standards costs you. So I shot them an email. I shot IHS Global an email. I made the mistake of shooting them the email from my work email address. And so they saw my email address and they said, you guys already have a copy. Contact your local person, blah, blah, blah. And I had to shoot back an email. Look, this is not for the company. This is for me. And so he shot me back a message and he said that there is a subscription thing that you can buy. Please see the attachment. When I looked at the attachment, it had nothing to do with the TIA. So I haven't gotten back a response yet. So once I get that response, I will go ahead and make sure that I revisit this issue and give you guys an update. So is it worth having the standards? Again, that kind of depends. If you've got the TDMM, if you've got the Bixby Pocket Guides, if you've got other resources, they quote the standards. The only time I would say you really need standards is because sometimes the standards change and then there's a little bit of lag time before it gets updated. There's a little bit more information in the standards that you don't find necessarily in another technical document. So they're worth having, but I know very few RCDDs, very few estimators, project managers who have $1,500 just to go buy a set of ANSI standards. Hopefully that's something your company purchases. Your company should have every company, every contractor, every manufacturer, every consultant, every engineer should have a copy of these documents available to them at their company. So there you go. So another question that I had to field this week was, why are HDMI cables directional? HDMI, high definition multimedia interface. So those are the cables that you connect, for example, like your TV to your switch box, your set-top box, stuff like that. It gives you better quality audio, better quality sound, bigger screen, and stuff like that. The truth in the matter is, not all HDMI cables are directional. In fact, the majority of them are not directional. Right? Doesn't matter which side that you plug in. You only get into the directional HDMI cables when you start getting into the ones that are amplified. So when you start getting above 50 feet, right? There's a 100-foot HDMI cable that you can purchase. There is an amplifier on one of that cable, and that amplifier amplifies the signal being put into the cable. So it obviously has to be next to the source, not the receiver. So that one is a directional. But by far, the majority of HDMI cables are not directional. Again, just as a reminder, if you have a question, welcome to the 3 people here on LinkedIn and the 6 or 7 people here on YouTube. If you have a question, put it in the chat box, and then I'll make sure that we answer it for you tonight. This is only a half-hour show, and we're already 12 minutes into it. And for those of you who joined lately, remember, what are you drinking tonight? That's part of this. This is after hours, right? Chuck is drinking Zevia. Shotzi's drinking Dr. Pepper, like he always drinks Dr. Pepper. Actually, it's Diet Dr. Pepper, not Dr. Pepper. So yeah, make sure you let us know. And adult beverages are allowed because it's after hours. It's 6 p.m. We're off work. Okay, so now the next question I fielded that I'm putting in today's class is, it says, when installing a cable, I noticed that the foot markings on the jacket didn't match the length of the tester. Would a manufacturer still be able to get a warranty on this since the jacket isn't over $295? Now, the reason that there's a difference is because there's a physical length and an electrical length to every communications cable. So the electrical length is the actual length of the pairs. If you actually open up a 4-pair cable and you look at the 4 pairs, the 4 pairs are all twisted, and they're twisted at different rates. So when you actually go into a test result and look at the actual lengths of the test, they will be 4 different lengths. You might have one at 149 feet, one pair at 150, another pair at 151, another pair at 152. But then when you compare them to the markings on the jacket, you're going to get a different number. If your NVP is set correctly, the NVP is nominal velocity propagation. That's just basically a setting that you can put in the tester to make it work exactly for your cable. Communication cables generally run between about 0.55 and 0.75, right? So what that means is if you have a cable that the NVP is 0.71, that means that the electron travels at 71% of the speed of light in a vacuum, right? So the higher the number, the faster the electron travels. And so if you had the correct NVP set in the tester, not the generic one that comes with the tester, you actually looked up the NVP on the cut sheet and you put that NVP in the tester, I would trust that more than I would trust the marking on the jacket. Now, I can't speak for all manufacturers, but I can speak for a few that I submitted warranties for and one that I work for. Some of them, or actually most of them that I've dealt with, will allow you to go a little bit over that 295, provided that none of the other tests fail, right? The near and crosstalk, power sum near and crosstalk, all those, as long as those all pass, the insertion loss and all that other stuff are good, some of them will still give you that warranty for the cable. Some won't. So the question was really, will a manufacturer still warranty that cable? If it does, I mean, if you want to know, contact that particular manufacturer, the program for them that handles the warranty, and ask them. They'll tell you. If you're not worried about the warranty, and if you want to know if a cable will still work over 295, do a qualification test on it. Use a bit error rate tester and put in the type of LAN that they've got. It puts data across the cable and it'll tell you if it works or not, regardless of the length of the cable. Okay. The next question that I fielded this week was, would you recommend using LSZH cabling, low smoke, zero halogen cable? LSZH cable is a listed cable, just like CMP is and CMR is. CMP is plenum, CMR is riser rating. In that plenum environment, you have to use plenum rated cabling, CMP. Low smoke zero halogen is like plenum rated cable on steroids. It produces even less toxic off gas and less smoke than plenum cable does. It's also about 2.5 to 3 times the price of plenum cable. So it's extremely expensive cabling. So the question was, would I recommend using it? If it's a traditional office building, I would probably just go with plenum cable. If I'm in a competitive bid environment where everybody else is bidding plenum cable, I would bid plenum cable. I would probably give them the option for low smoke zero halogen if I thought the environment warranted using low smoke zero halogen cabling. But I wouldn't put it in as my base price, because then when they go to compare those bids, they're not comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And the next thing you know, you don't win the project because you put in low smoke zero halogen cable. You over-designed it for the system. So yeah, it's now some environments where I might recommend using low smoke zero halogen would be, for example, like a scientific lab, especially if they've got oxygen there, hospitals. A lot of people don't know this about oxygen. It's an oxidizer. And what that means is if you have a fire and let's say you have an oxygen tank and that oxygen tank ruptures and all that pure oxygen gets dropped into the environment, it will make the fire burn hotter and faster. Oxygen is not flammable. It's an oxidizer. So in that kind of environment where it's making it burn hotter and the fire burn faster, you definitely want a cable that provides a little bit extra protection. Industrial environment, same kind of thing, right? But even in those kinds of environments, I still wouldn't price in low smoke zero halogen until I talk to the customer first and let them know what I was doing, right? For that particular type of environment. Always give the customer the option. Always give them the option. Again, if you have a question, put it in the chat box so we can answer it in tonight's show. We are about 7:17. We got about another 13 minutes. I got 2 more questions left, right? No, actually, 1 more question left. No, 2 more questions left. So I do have time to take some additional questions tonight. So make sure you put your question in the chat box. Again, make sure you also visit the webpage too to check our podcast and our YouTube videos. It's www.letstalkcabling.com. So the next question I got was, I was talking to an individual and we were talking about termination blocks in consolidation points. And they asked, why can't you use an RJ45 coupler? Are they really less efficient than a punch block? So what they're talking about is, so for example, you've got 2 cables that you want to connect together. You can buy these couplers. They've got 2 RJ45s on each end, right? So you literally take a patch cord, you plug in one side of the coupler, plug another RJ45 in the other side of the coupler, and it connects those 2 together. Those are definitely not recommended to be installed because it's really a splice. It's 2 splices because you got where the patch cords make contact on this side and where the patch cords make contact on that side. So you actually have 2 splices. You have double the attenuation, and that's not what that's really designed for, right? So if that patch cable gets moved or jarred, you could actually cause the pins not to line up with the pins inside of the coupler and cause something to go down. On a punch block, when you're punching down a cable like on a 110 block, and then you put that C4 clip on it, and then you punch down your patch cord or your cross connect on top of that C4 clip, it's in there pretty good. It can still, you can still have some intermittent continuity, some intermittent issues like that as well. But number one, nobody's supposed to be in a consolidation point, right? So that lessens it down, and it's only one splice, so it's less attenuation. So it does affect the performance a little bit. That's why they tell us in the, I believe it says it. I can't remember if I read it in the TDMM or if it read it in the standards. It says that while you can put in a consolidation point, don't put one in unless you absolutely need it, because it's really just a splice. So So yeah, I would totally stay away from RJ45 couplers and those kinds of things, just for that very reason. Again, one more question to go. Put your question in the chat box, and we'll answer it tonight's show. I guess nobody is brave enough to join tonight's show. I gave you the link right there. I will let you come in and ask me a question live on the spot. This week, by the way, is International Women in Construction Week. International Women in Construction Week. So there's a lot of women in our industry, a lot more women, and the industry starting to get to be more diverse, and I think that's a good thing. I really, really do. I remember when I was an instructor, a Bixie instructor for a large contractor in the DC area, when we would have women technicians come through the course, and when it came time for the fiber, they always were better at fiber than guys were. I never understood why, but consistently they were always better terminating at fiber than men were. Maybe it's because men don't take instructions very well, right? Because we know everything. We watched it on a YouTube video. We know how to do this. You've been taught wrong. All right, so there you go. And so another question was, what is the difference between insertion loss and attenuation? What's the difference between insertion loss and attenuation? The answer is nothing. They're both the same. So what is insertion loss? It's basically signal loss when you're inserting into a connector, or insertion loss on a channel. So the signal gets weaker as it goes down the cable because of the opposition flow of electricity. It gets weaker. That's insertion loss. Us old people used to call it attenuation. So they're both the same thing. I was wrong. I do actually have one more question. Somebody asked me, and before I ask this again, I'm going to put it out there. We got probably about 7 minutes left still. Put your question in the chat box so we can answer it tonight. If not, we'll just sign off when we finish this last question. So I'm giving you some time to type it in right now, because some people are slow typers. They do the whole. I understand. Ow! Why do they call it your funny bone when you hit it? Because it's not very funny. And that's like the third time this week I've done that. I got to fix my desk. So another question that I fielded this week: what happened to Cat 7? What happened to Cat 7? So if you look at the ANSI standard, it says that you can put in Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, Cat 8. Where's Cat 7, right? So just as a quick refresh, Cat 5e is 100 megahertz, Cat 6 is 250, Cat 6a is 500, Cat 8 is 2000 megahertz, if I remember right off the top of my head. So what happened was Cat 7 has a real strong presence across the pond, right? So it was actually ratified in 2002 in the ISO 11801 document. And here's a funny thing. It was, even though it was ratified in 2002, it was actually designed for 10 gigabit Ethernet. But 10 gigabit Ethernet didn't come into fruition until like 2006. So the cable was there to support 10 gig before 10 gig was even a thing, right? Now, Cat 7 cable, I've seen Cat 7 cable. Never did a project with it. Never had, fortunately, had to deal with it. But Cat 7 cable looked a lot like Type 1 cable to me. Type 1 cable is a cable that we used to install back in the 80s and the 90s. So it's an SFTP cable, right? Shielded foil twisted pair cable. So each pair has a full shield around it. Then it's got a braid that goes around that. Real pain in the neck to be terminated with, right? Because you're dealing with all of them different shields. Now they had like what's called a Tera connector or terabyte connector or something like that you can terminate on that. And it was actually good up to 600 megahertz. So it was actually better than Cat 6a. You'll find it's used a lot in like Switzerland and Germany, where they have really, really strict EMC guidelines, electromagnetic compatibility. We just read about that in our TDMM study group last week too. That's kind of cool. It's kind of cool how when you're doing the study group, going through the TDMM, how things pop up that you're reading. It's just really, really cool. Then they introduced Cat 7a. Now, Cat 7a was introduced in 2009, 2010. I think it's 2010. And it's good up to 1,000 megahertz. I've yet to come across a project that uses Cat 7a. I've seen customers require or put out a request for quote for Cat 7, but not Cat 7A. Generally, if you have that kind of happening, what's usually happening is that customer, their corporate office is in Europe or Switzerland or Britain or someplace where they it's somewhere where the ISO is in charge of everything. Hey, here's a question for you, because you know me, I love acronyms, right? If you see me on LinkedIn, I do the acronym challenge every morning. What does the ISO stand for? If you think you know, put the answer in the comment box. What does ISO stand for? It's not as easy as you think it is, right? So that was the last question that I fielded. Anybody have any live questions for tonight? Any live questions for tonight? No takers, huh? No takers on that ISO? The ISO actually stands for the International Organization of Standardization. International Organization or Standardization. So there you go. Oh, wait, we got a question coming in. And this is an AV question too. Hold on, I got to put on my safety glasses so the words don't pop off the screen and injure my eyes. These are not reading glasses. So this question comes from 13 Serpents. When connecting speakers with a drain wire, can you twist them together and ground the near end, or should you connect the drain to the negative terminal? Wow, that's a good question. Unfortunately, 13 Serpents, that's not one of my strong points. I will find out the answer for you. Multiple speakers, wide parallel. I will find out the answer for you. I have a very close friend who does AV stuff. So make sure you look in the comments. Give me about a day or so. This will get posted to YouTube tonight, because I think it looks to me like you're coming from YouTube. Your question came from YouTube. Yeah. So make sure you check back in a day or so in the comment section, and I will get you that answer. The last one, every time that I've done speakers that were run in that we ran, we didn't do that. We didn't put the grounds on the negative terminal, but that's not going to say that it was done right or not. But I will get you the answer, because I know another RCDD who knows AV really well. So we'll get you that answer. Any other questions? Yeah, we got 2 minutes left before we sign off. Any other questions? See, that's the bad thing about being a subject matter expert is the ICT industry is so vast and so encompassing, you can't be an expert in everything. That's why if you go to my webpage and you look, I got 4 or 5 people on my expert council. I got somebody from testing, somebody from labeling. I got somebody from pulling lubricant. I got somebody from Low Voltage Nation for social media and that kind of stuff, because nobody is an expert in this industry. So, but you do have to be good at knowing where to get that information from. So, any other questions? Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to type that in. What can I do in those last few seconds? Let's try another acronym. Yeah. What does, or better yet, you type in an acronym and let's see if I know the acronym. Yeah, let's test Chuck. What acronym do you know that maybe Chuck doesn't know? I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that, put that in, right? Right. So the first one that came in is, excuse me. The first one that came in is, what is TO? Telecommunications outlet, right? Telecommunications outlet. So another question came in, A and B code testing. Why? Oh, look at Shotzi showing off ADF. A and B code testing. Now, 13 Serpents, I'm assuming you mean 568A and 568B. Is that what you're asking me? I got to make sure I understand the question. ADF. You got me a good one on today, Shotzi. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I don't know off the top of my head. So if you're talking about T568A and T568B, the only difference is the orange and the green pairs. It doesn't really matter when you test it. They both perform equally well. Just make sure that very good. They both perform equally well. The reason we have 2 different wiring schemes is because the 568A wiring scheme is 568B wiring scheme is very similar to the USOC wiring scheme. Oops, here's my watch. Tell me it's 6:30. So it's close to the USOC wiring scheme. And so we have this 2 wiring schemes. They actually recommend for commercial installs do A or B. If you're doing residential, use A. Just make sure that whatever you terminate on one end, you terminate on the other end. For as far as testing, they should their performance should be equally matched. Because if you're putting signal across all 4 pair of cables, it doesn't really matter. Now, back in a long time ago, when we were doing 10 base T, we were only using 2 pairs, pins 1, 2, 3, and 6. So in that scenario, it absolutely would make a difference, because the more twist per inch, the more protection you have from EMI and RFI, radio frequency interference, electromagnetic interference. RFI is a subset of EMI. Learned that again in our TDMM study group this week, right? And so they should perform equally well. Got time for one more question, even though it's 6:30 and my wife's outside waiting for me to put away the animals because we have a farm here. I'll give you one more chance to ask one more question, and then we'll go ahead and answer that. So we got a whopping 6 people on LinkedIn and 10 people on YouTube. Nice, very good. And I love this format. I love the Q&A. But if there's a subject matter that you want to hear me speak on, like I did one on ladder safety, one of the first live talk ones. Let me know what the subject matter is. If I can do with one within 30 minutes, well, I'll do one that way too. But I really like the Q&A. So 13 Service came back and says, I have got return loss to go away, terminating code and testing B. So return loss is a mismatch of characteristic impedance. And the cable is rated to 100 ohms, and so is the connector. So it really shouldn't have affected the return loss, but just by changing the wiring scheme over, you should have gotten the same results. So you're saying it went from a fail to a pass? Is that what you're saying, 13 Serpents? Because I've never heard that before. And like I said, return loss is a mismatch of characteristic impedance. And it's the same on all 4 pairs, no matter what the length that cable is, whether it's 6 inches or 1,000 feet long, it does not matter. So, okay, so we had hit our 30-minute mark. If you have any other questions, make sure you put it in the chat box on LinkedIn, or put it in the comment section in the YouTube video, and I will make sure that I answer those questions next Thursday night, 6 p.m. live. And I'll tell you what, 13 Serpents, I'm going to go ahead and reach out to one of my testing friends and try to get a clarification on that return loss too. But it shouldn't have given you that difference. So until next time, everybody, be safe.